Ruth chapter number 4, I'm going to read verse number 1. We'll read a few verses and be a little different kind of a message than last night. I don't really have an outline, but I pray God will use it. Verse number 1, Ruth chapter 4, the Bible said, Then went Boaz up to the gate and set him down there. And behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city. That's all those old men that go to McDonald's every morning and lie over Egg McMuffins, you know. And he said, Sit you down here, and they sat down. And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's. And I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me that I may know. For there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee. And this man, watch his response, and he said, I will redeem it. Boaz goes to this near kinsman and said, You remember Elimelech? He said, I do. That's the saddest story. Died in the world. He said, Well, Elimelech left a piece of ground. It's a good piece of ground. And that man no doubt thought, it is. I've seen it. I could raise a farm there. I could build a house there. Maybe shoot a deer on that every once in a while. He said, Well, if you want that property, it's yours because you're the near kinsman. You can take the ground. And that man said, All right, I'll redeem it unto myself. I want the field. I want the ground. In verse number 5, Boaz says, Wait a minute, there's a little caveat. He said, Then said Boaz, What day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. Watch his change now, this man. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. He said, Wait a minute. I want the field, but I don't want that female that comes with it. I'd take the ground, but I don't want that girl. I'd like to have the land, but that lady, if I get hooked up with her, it's going to ruin my testimony. You can imagine what they're going to say on Facebook. If I get hooked up with, she's a Moabitess. He's saying this, that dirt is worth more than that girl. That ground's worth more than that female is to me. She's not worth it. I don't want her. He said, if you want her, you can have her. Boaz goes through the part of the near kinsman. The Bible said he plucks off his shoe. And don't you fellas wish we still did that instead of the stupid diamond rings? My wife right now has a closet full of engagement rings, size 7. But anyway, high maintenance. Y'all are so high maintenance. Bible preaches against jewelry. Anyway, they get married. Ruth, this woman who was unworthy, this first man didn't even want her, got wed to Boaz, this kinsman redeemer. They get married. God blesses their marriage. She conceives. Verse 13, the Bible said, So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. This is the offspring of the union between one who was unworthy, but got wed to the Redeemer. In verse 17, all the nosy old ladies in their church got together, and the Bible said, the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, There's a son born to Naomi. Now watch this, and they called his name Obed. He's the father of Jesse, the father of David. This woman who was unworthy, when she was wed to the Redeemer, a natural byproduct came forth. Fruit from that union with one who needed redeemed and one who was, or the one who could do the redemption, the Redeemer. She gave birth to a baby. These old ladies looked down as that baby boy cried and said, Ruth, there's only one thing we can name that baby. You're going to name him Obed. Now, that word Obed means praise. It means worship. It means faithfulness. So I think we could say the natural outflow of one who's been hooked up to the Redeemer ought to be praise, worship, faithfulness. People ask me all the time, why do you do that? Why do you preach like that? Why do you run around like that? You talk so fast. Don't you ever get tired of going to church every night? I mean, all the soul winning, the Bible study, the prayer. You wear a tie on an airplane? Brother Chitty. But anyway, I mean, all the time they ask me these questions. And here's what I want to preach on a little while this morning. Why do I do what I do? Here it is. I was unworthy, but I wasn't unwanted. And that's why I worship. For a little while, I pray God will help us remember what we were and what's been done in our life and help motivate us to keep doing what we're supposed to do. Lord, I pray you'd please speak to my heart fresh about this truth this morning. Speak to the heart of every laborer here today, workers. No doubt weary in the work, but prayerfully not tired of the work. I pray you'd help us remember, Lord, we weren't born saved. We weren't born in a suit and tie. We were sinners. But thank God for redemption. I pray you'd help us, Lord, to get a fresh motivation to go forward and do a work for you in Jesus' name. Amen. I love the book of Ruth. In fact, I believe the book of Ruth is a life-changing book. Of course, all the Bible is a life-changing book, and whatever book I'm preaching from, that's my favorite. But I love the book of Ruth. I believe we can see a good picture of the gospel, even if you will, here in the book of Ruth. Now, I'm not sure the man God used to pen the book, but I know this without a doubt, that God did guide the hand of the man who penned this book. Now, as we get into the sermon for this morning, the message, let me give you a few things to consider about the book of Ruth. This book is interesting. Number one, the name of it's interesting. It's named after a lady. You ever notice that? There's not many books in the Bible named for women. But this book, the book of Ruth, is named after a woman. So girls, here's your sermon. Don't want to hear any more talking the rest of the week. The second thing I found significant about the book of Ruth is it's void of great miracles. By that I mean you don't find water turned into wine. We don't see the Red Sea parted. We don't see God shutting the mouths of lions or resurrecting the dead. But let me say this. I'm afraid if we're not careful, we only associate the miraculous with big things. But can I say everything that God's in is miraculous? Every breath that you breathe, every time your heart beats in rhythm, God is not just in the big things. God is in the minute details of everyday life. So though we don't see great miracles, God is working throughout the book of Ruth. The third thing I notice interesting about the book is the focus it has on a family unit. God follows a family through the 4 chapters of the book of Ruth. And that's a good reminder that our God is interested in the family. In fact, before God ever organized the church, God ordained the family. And God is still the God of the family. I understand it's under attack in 2018, and they would try to make the queers on every sitcom the hero, and they make us look abnormal and them normal. But God is still for one man, one woman, for life, having children, and serving God as a family. And by the way, fellas, it's all right to say amen. Ask your wife to say amen this morning. Would you help me a little bit? It's hot. Would you give your husband a day pass and let him say amen this morning only? Would you? Would you do that for me? The fourth thing I find significant about this book is it's a story of redemption. Through every chapter of the book of Ruth, we see the theme of redemption. There's a lady in the story. In the beginning of the book, she's outside of the nation of Israel. By the end of the book, she's part of the nation of Israel. In the beginning of the book, she's a stranger. But by the end of the book, she's married to a Redeemer. In the beginning of the book, it's amazing. In the beginning of the book, she's a foreigner. By the end of the book, she's part of the family. So we find redemption all throughout the book of Ruth. Now, let me tell you a little bit of the story, because if I don't, I've got no message at all. So here we find in chapter 1 that a famine comes to Bethlehem, Judah. This is the place of God, the house of bread. A famine comes. And by the way, just because you're saved, it doesn't mean you'll never have any struggles or trials in the Christian life. It's not always babies laughing, mother-in-law a million miles away, money in the bank, cotton candy raining from heaven. Sometimes things fall apart. Sometimes famine comes even to the people of God. This famine comes, and a man by the name of Elimelech decides to take his family to a place called Moab. Now, this is a good lesson. You always make a mistake when you live by emotion and not by principle. When the temperature was turned up in his life, he got hasty, didn't wait on the will of God, made a decision on emotion, and is about to wreck his family. He takes his family to Moab. Moab is a type of the world. In fact, in Deuteronomy, God cursed the Moabites and said they could have no entrance into the congregation of the Lord. So here's this man taking his family from the will of God, the place of God, to the world. He plans to sojourn, but he stays. That's exactly how it happens. Can I say it's a lot easier to get out of the will of God than it is to get back in to the will of God? A lot of people say, well, I'll get right when I want to. No, you won't. Can I say once the world gets its hold on you, it's a lot harder to get back than you think it is. While Elimelech is there with his wife Naomi and his boys Mahlon and Chilion, and by the way, thank God my parents didn't name me either of those names. But while they're there, Elimelech dies, graveyard dead. What a testimony. Dad died out of the will of God. Daddy died in the world. These two boys, Mahlon and Chilion, marry up with some Moabitess women. You see, backsliding doesn't just affect you. It'll affect your entire family. They get yoked up with a couple girls. One marries a girl by the name of Ruth, a Moabitess, and another by the name of Oprah. Orpah, but it just sounds like she belongs there. Orpah, a Moabitess, they marry them. After some time, these boys die as well. Here's this woman, Naomi. She's had to bury a husband in the world. She's buried her boys in the world. She's a broken woman, a bitter woman, an empty woman. One day she hears news that God has visited His people again in Bethlehem, Judah. By the way, God always blesses where God has always blessed. You don't have to change. You don't have to look for something new. God still blesses what God has always blessed. If God blessed Bible preaching, He blesses it now. If God blessed soul winning, He blesses it now. If God blessed bus ministry, He'll bless it now. You don't have to change. God blesses where He's always blessed. She hears now there's food on the table. There's food in the pantry. There's food at the market. And she makes the decision to go back to the will of God. I'm glad if you're here this morning out of the will of God, there's a welcome mat at God's house, and you can come back, because God doesn't orphan His offspring or disown His children. And I'm glad it doesn't matter how far out you've gone. You might have wandered far away from God, but you can come home. She begins to make her way back to Bethlehem, Judah. As she goes, at first her daughter-in-laws cleave to her. She tells them to stay, but they refuse. Again, she'll turn to them and say, listen, you don't want to go with me. I'm old. I've got no children. You don't want to go with me. I've got no money. I'm a broke, bitter woman. And the Bible said that Orpah kisses her mother-in-law and turns back, but Ruth cleaves and follows her mother-in-law back to Bethlehem, Judah. Now the story transitions from Elimelech and his family to focusing on this woman by the name of Ruth. Now, I want to say a few things about Ruth that might sound surprising, but I believe it'll make sense as we get to the end of the message in a few hours. So let me say a few things about Ruth. Number one, when we consider Ruth, you have to understand Ruth is wicked. You say, but Brother Cooper, how could you say that? There's a book in the Bible named after Ruth. I'm not saying she's wicked because of what she did. She's wicked because of what she was. The Bible said she's Ruth the Moabitess. There's nothing she could do that could take that stain away. There's nothing she could do that could erase that stigma. There's nothing she could do that could change the fact she was born into the wrong nation, born into the wrong family. She is Ruth the Moabitess. In the eyes of God, everything about her was unrighteous. In the eyes of God, everything about her was wicked. There's no good work she could do. There's nothing she could do to change it. God had already condemned her nation unclean, an offscouring of society. Ruth is wicked. Number two, Ruth is wrecked. See, what do you mean? She's a young lady who already had to bury a husband. Ruth knows what it is to sorrow. Ruth knows what it is to feel pain. Ruth knows what it is to have life that's hard. No doubt she wrestled in the night about her future, wondered how she'd make the ends meet, wondered what her life would be. And this woman's existence is a wrecked existence, a hard existence. So number one, Ruth is wicked. Number two, Ruth is wrecked. Number three, let me say it like this, Ruth is wanting. As you come to chapter 2 of the book of Ruth, you find that Ruth and Naomi are broke. They're bottomed out. They've got nothing at all to offer. They've got no food on their table, no money in the bank. They are totally running on empty. There's a void there, and they can't fill it. There's no power in and of themselves to change the situation. They are running on zero. So much so, she's got to go beg just to make the ends meet every single day. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think that sounds like a very good life. This woman is wicked in the eyes of God. Her life is wrecked because of her experiences. She's wanting. There's an emptiness on the inside that she alone cannot satisfy. And then we come down to chapter 2, verse 3, and find that she's wandering. You say, what do you mean? The Bible said her hap. That means she just happened into a field. She meets with Naomi and decides to go out and glean. The law of Israel is that the widows and the crippled folk could glean in the corners of the field. And she goes out to try to glean what's left over from the reapers. And as she goes, she got no idea where she's going. She's just wandering aimlessly through life. She's got no direction. She has no purpose. She has no plan. She has no vision. She has no goal. She doesn't know what's going to happen to her day by day. Just wandering through life. Boy, that sounds like a bad way to live. Boy, that sounds like a bad existence. Man, I wouldn't want to be like Ruth. A wicked woman, a wrecked woman, a wanting woman, a wandering woman. But when we come to chapter 2 and find out, she's going to be a welcomed woman. Because here as she's wandering, God's working. She wasn't looking for God, but God was looking for her. She wasn't thinking about God, but God was thinking about her. She's just wandering through fields. There's no property signs. There's no fence lines. All she's doing is wandering. And can I say, while she doesn't even know it, God is directing her steps because she gets in the right field. The Bible said she got into the field of a man by the name of Boaz. Now that might not mean much to us, and it wouldn't have meant nothing to Ruth, but that means a lot there in Bethlehem, Judah. Boaz is a mighty man of wealth. That means he's got supply others don't have. That means he's got finances others don't have. That means he has power that others don't have. He's a nephew of Aaron, the high priest. He's part of the lineage of Judah. He's got rights to the throne and the priesthood. This man, above all that, is a near kinsman to Elimelech. That means he can do a lot for Ruth and Naomi. That means he can give them back everything they lost in the world. Everything Moab took away, Boaz can give back. All the brokenness, all the emptiness, all the longing. He can take their situation and change it from lack to surplus, from empty to full, from broken to made whole. He can change their life. Ruth doesn't know who he is. Ruth doesn't know who that fella is. Here comes Boaz. He rides up on his horse and he sees this little girl gleaning in his field. He could have kicked her out. He could have shooed her away. He asked the servant, said, whose damsel is this? And here's how they say, that's that Moabitess damsel. What they're saying is that's that wicked woman. That's that wrecked woman. That's that wanton woman. That's that wandering woman. And Boaz could have said, get her out of here. But he welcomes her. He looks on her with mercy. He looks on her with grace. And he says, honey, from now on, you don't have to go anywhere else. You're going to glean in my field. I'm going to have them leave you some handfuls on. She doesn't even know who he is. And he's being good to her anyhow. She's not worshiping him. And he's loving on her anyhow. Whoa, that's grace is what that is. He said, I'm going to put food on your table. What my servants drink, you're going to drink. From now on, your need will be met at my hand. I've got you from here on out. And she looks at Boaz and said, why have I, stranger, found grace in thy sight? And all I can say is, I don't know. I guess Boaz just like that. He's so good to her. He sends her home with an ephah of barley. I can see as Ruth's been gleaning all day. Naomi's back here biting her fingernails to the quick, wondering what they're going to eat for supper. And Ruth comes. She got an ephah of barley in both arms shoved up under her chin. She can't even knock the door. She takes her foot, kicks it like that. Naomi on the inside, being the mother-in-law she was, says, what? Ruth said, open the door. She says, why? Mother-in-law. She said, my show's on. Open the door. And I can see as Naomi goes and opens that door and say, whoa, where in the world did you get that? And Ruth said, a guy gave it to me today. And she comes in, lays that ephah of barley on the table. And she said, well, what's his name? And I can see it as Ruth said, let me think of his name. Let me try to remember his name. His name, I think it was Bill. And we said, ain't no Bill in Bethlehem. Maybe it was Bob. But anyway, I said, maybe it was Bob. No, it wasn't Bob either. Maybe it was and then we said, Boaz. That's it, Boaz. And I can see him go, whoa, girl, you got in the right field today. I know you don't know. I know you don't know who that is, but let me tell you who that is. That man can change our life. That man can turn our situation around. That man can take us from broken to made whole, from empty to full, from lack to surplus. He can take us and give us back everything that we lost in the world. From there on out, she didn't go anywhere else. She went to him. Every bit of food on their table came from the hand of Boaz. Every bit of supply came from the supply of Boaz. He's being good in her life. That woman's wicked. That woman's wrecked. That woman's wanting. She's wandering, but she's been welcomed by Boaz. In chapter 2, she's in his field. In chapter 3, she's at his feet. The harvest was ending. And they make the decision, the blessings are running out. We're going to have more than just the goodness of Boaz. You're going to have Boaz. She said, here's what we're going to do. Ruth, get dolled up. Take a bath. Put on some deodorant. Ladies, I'm for it. Shave your whiskers. It's a Baptist meeting. Put on some perfume. Said Boaz has been out in the field all day reaping, and he's laying on the threshing floor. You know what's on the threshing floor? The finished work from his labor. He's laying there on the threshing floor and said, you're going to go to him in the night and go see if he'll marry you. And I can see as Ruth sneaks in that room. Here she comes. And she doesn't come standing, but she lays down at his feet. She uncovers his toes a little bit, and that night air begins to blow on his toes. Wakes him up a little bit, and he looks down at his feet and says, "Whoa, man!" Woman, "Whoa, man!" And she looks up at him with those big doe eyes, and in Kentucky English, she says, "Do you marry me?" Now, here's what she's saying. I've got nothing. You got everything. Would you take me? You've got a name above every name. Boy, I got a bad name. Would you take me? You're a mighty man of wealth. I'm broke. Would you take me? Everybody mocks me. Boy, they love you. Would you take me? I can't add anything to you. You sure could do a lot for me. Would you take me? And Boaz looks on this wicked, wayward, wrecked, wanting, wandering woman and said, I'd take you. She came to him at night, but she's going to leave in the light. She came to him in darkness, laid down at his feet by his finished work. He said, you stay here, and I'm going to send you home in light. He didn't send her home empty-handed, but he sent her home with a blessing as well. He sent her home with 6 measures of barley. I can see this now. He said, I'll be your near kinsman, but there's one nearer than I. Go home, take these 6 measures of barley and wait on me. So here's what she has to do. She has to take that and go home and by faith wait on Boaz. She's sitting there at home. Well, he said he's going to come get me. I reckon maybe he'll come get me. I hope he comes by faith. I got to take him at his word. I just got to trust what he said. Boaz told me that he's going to come get me to be his bride. I just got to wait. I'm just going to have to sit here and take him at his word. And while she's waiting on this side, he's working for her on that side. Woo! I mean, while she's sitting here pining away by faith, Boaz is doing his part. She couldn't see it, but didn't change faith. He's doing it anyway on the other side. Boaz goes and gets all them old men together. He gets that near kinsman and said, do you remember Elimelech? They said, yeah, boy, that's a sad story. It is. He died in the world. I'm sorry, his dog ever died in the world. That's right, but he left a piece of ground. And that man said, oh, he did? He said, yes, sir. He said, it's a good piece of ground. I mean, real fertile, nice piece of ground. And you're the nearest kinsman. If you want it, you can have it. And that fellow said, whoa, I want it. He said, I've been looking to build a house. I want to shoot a deer. Might raise a garden on that. I'll take the ground. And boy, I said, all right, you can have it. But I got to tell you this. If you take the ground, there's a girl comes with it. If you take that field, there's a female attached to it. If you take that land, you got to take this lady. He said, who is it? Ruth. Wait a minute, Ruth, you mean that Moabitess girl? Don't you know who she is? Don't you know what she's done? Don't you know where she's from? Don't you know her testimony? She's a wicked woman. She's a wrecked woman. If I wed her, they're going to talk about me. She's not worth it. That ground's worth more than she is. I don't want it. You can have her. And Boaz says, all right, I'll take her. I can see as Boaz goes marching down the road to get Ruth. She's been sitting there by faith waiting on Boaz. I hope he comes today. I hope he comes today. Oh, I hope he comes. And back in those days, y'all know this. You read your Bible, that they had a crier go before the bridegroom, cry out, behold, the bridegroom cometh. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. And I can see his Ruth sitting there by faith, and all of a sudden she hears the shout. Amen. Behold, the bridegroom cometh, and Boaz comes into sight, and she sees his silhouette on the horizon and said, that's him. He didn't lie to me. He meant what he said. There's going to be a wedding. I can see as that little church house is decked out in white. They got bells ringing. They're pelting each other with rice. Mother-in-laws are body slamming each other. I mean, there's the wedding. They say their I-do's. They have their first kiss. Then they have the honeymoon. God blesses that union, and 9 months later, there's a cry in the background. Oh, the old ladies of the church get together, and they come in Ruth's nursery. They look at that baby and they say, Ruth, you got a name? Ruth said, I'm still struggling. I'm looking for one. They say, no, we got you one. I know what you're going to name that baby because of where you're from and what you were and what Boaz did for you. There's only one thing we can call that. We're going to call that baby Obed. We're going to call him praise. We're going to call him worship. We're going to call him adoration. We're going to call him faithfulness because of what you've done, what he's done in your life. You've been redeemed. Now, everywhere she goes, at the marketplace, at the store, everywhere she goes, that's a testimony to the fact she's been redeemed. When they see baby worship and they see baby faithfulness and they see baby adoration, everybody in town's going to know that woman's been redeemed. That woman's life has been changed. That woman's made new. That woman's different. She got a new name. She got a new nature. She got a new family. Why? All because of redemption. Redemption gave it to her. Redemption gave her acceptance. Redemption gave her her nation. Redemption gave her justification. Redemption gave her standing. Redemption brought grace to her life. Redemption's what caused her to praise everywhere she went. Baby, Obed. That's why she named him that. You say, well, what's that have to do with us? Everything. Now, I know most of y'all are born saved, but I wasn't, so just put up with me for a minute. There was a day in my life where I was wicked in the eyes of God. Not simply because of what I did, but because of who I was. I was born a sinner, headed for hell, lost and undone without God, deserving to go to hell. Ought to be there now, suffering in eternal fire. I was wicked because of sin, like the preacher preached on. I was wrecked. The Bible said the way of a transgressor is hard. And I tell you, there's no joy in the world. There's no fulfillment in the world. There's no peace in the world. And if you're today lost, I'll tell you, you might act like you're enjoying it, but you're miserable on the inside, because the Bible said it's a wrecked life. I was wanting. I was empty. Drugs couldn't fill it. Alcohol couldn't fill it. Relationships couldn't fill it. Praise couldn't fill it. Popularity couldn't fill it. There was a God-sized vacuum in my life that only His grace could fill. I tell you, there's a day I was wicked. There was a day I was wrecked. There was a day I was wanting. There was a day I was wandering. I didn't know there was a God who cared about me. I didn't know He had a purpose for me. I knew nothing of providence or Him directing my steps. I just living for the moment, not for eternity. But thank God I was welcomed. When I didn't look for Him, He was looking for me. When I wasn't loving Him, He was loving me. All the good things in my life, that was God testifying that I, a stranger, found grace in His eyes. Every breath I breathe, every time my heart beat, every bit of food on my table, God was being good in my life. And I didn't even know who He was yet. But thank God for the day I met a soul winner. I met a preacher. I met someone to tell me, oh, you got in the right field. All those good things came from the right place. You've met the right man. Let me tell you who he is. He came from Bethlehem, just like Boaz. He's a high priest, just like Boaz. He's got rights to the throne, just like Boaz. He's a mighty man of wealth, just like Boaz. But Boaz is temporal. This man's eternal. And I heard about Jesus, and I heard about Calvary, and I heard what can wash away my sin. Nothing but His blood. I heard I can't be redeemed with corruptible things, but it took the precious blood of Christ. And one day I decided I need more than the goodness of God. I need God Himself. I need more than the blessing. I need the blesser. And I went to Jesus, and I laid down at His feet, and I laid down at His finished work, and I said, Jesus, would You take me? I'm nothing and You're everything. I've got no name. Your name's above every name. I'm poor and You own it all. You're righteous and I'm unrighteous. You're holy and I'm unholy. You're eternal and I'm temporal. You're perfect and I'm a sinner. Would You take me? And Jesus looked on me with love and compassion and with mercy and grace. And He said, yes, I'll take you. Yes, I died for you. Yes, I love you. And we hooked up. I got hitched to the Redeemer. And one day He'll take me to a wedding. But in the meantime, that union's produced some fruit. You say, why do you act like that? Why do you preach like that? Don't you get tired of soul winning? Why you always read your Bible? I want to ask you why you don't. I wouldn't want for Christianity either. It looks terminal, not eternal. Woo! Amen. Why do you preach like that? Because I'm not going to hell. Why do you shout like that? I'm not going to hell. Don't you get tired of the standards? No, I've been redeemed. I'm not going to hell. What about all these services every day? You're like, no, I like it. I'm not going to hell. I wasn't born saved and sanctified and spirit-filled and spit-shined and shine shoes and slicked hair and a paisley tie. I was a sinner headed for hell. But thank God Jesus died for me. And a little bit of Obed cries out in my life every once in a while. A little bit of praise and worship and adoration and thankfulness and faithfulness to God, because I've been redeemed. Redeemed from my past, redeemed in the present, redeemed for the future. Redeemed from the law, redeemed from sin, redeemed from judgment, redeemed from guilt, redeemed from shame. Woo, amen, redeemed. How I love to proclaim it. Redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Oh, how marvelous. Oh, how wonderful. And my song shall ever be redeemed by love divine. Glory, glory. Christ is mine. You say, why do you act like that? Why don't you? Yeah, if I was you, I'd quit my bus route. It's not like you're going to heaven. Yeah, if I was you, I wouldn't be a soul winner either. It's not like you're going to go to heaven. In fact, if I was you, I'd get real quiet. Don't let anybody know you say amen in church. Don't get too excited about this, but you got a mansion on streets of gold. I know it's hard and everything. Your name's written in the book of life. I just don't think it's worth it. Hello? Gonna live as long as God lives. Yeah, but you're not going to hell. You've been redeemed. Why you do it? Why do you run the buses? Why do you teach the classes? Why do you sweat and tear up the suits? Why do you preach on Wednesday night when nobody shows up? Why are you faithful on Sunday morning and Sunday night? Why do you tithe and support missions? Why do you love people who hurt you? Because we've been redeemed. Why do I do what I do? Why do you do what you do? Because we ought to be going to hell. But we're going to heaven. This is the most hell we'll ever experience. And it's pretty good right now. A sailor was going across the ocean on board of a ship. And he let a man get on board the boat that wasn't supposed to be on. The man wasn't a sailor, but the man brought his dog with him. And as he went across the sea, the man and his dog were standing looking over into the water, and the dog jumped from his arms into the sea. And the man said, "Help, man overboard!" The sailor came running and said, "Where is he?" He said, "There." And that man said, "That's a dog, that's not a man." He said, "But he's my best friend, my only friend. You've got to save him." He said, "I'll not go down for a dog." That man who could not swim ripped off his own shirt and shoes and threw his body into the water, held onto that dog, and they bobbed in the sea. And he yelled, "You wouldn't come down for a dog, but would you come down for a man?" And the sailor went into the sea to save the man. And he saved the dog in the process. You and I are nothing but dogs lost in sin. And God looked at us and said, "I cannot let you in. In your unrighteousness, in your sin, you cannot enter heaven." But thank God, like he said, Jesus came to where we were. And he did what we couldn't do. And he's satisfied. He paid for. He took care of our debt. And now I'm getting in because of Jesus. So I reckon it's worth serving him till I see him face to face. You say, "Brother Cooper, why you do it?" Here it is. I was unworthy, but I wasn't unwanted. That's why I worship.